Calcharo is a character that is pretty divisive among some circles in the community, with some saying he is absolute garbage, and others calling him one of the best DPSs in the game. But why is there such a big divide in the community's thoughts on Calcharo? That's what I'm going to be explaining in this video. How good is Calcharo actually? First, I'm going to be explaining a little bit about his kit. Afterwards, I'll talk a bit about his meta history, and then finally, I'm going to discuss why he's just so decisive. First of all, how does his kit even work? Well, I shouldn't have to dwell too long on this because his kit is essentially just Shengliao. If you've played Shengliao before, you're gonna hear a lot of familiar things when I talk about Calcharo. Calcharo is a Resonance Liberation based Electro DPS who focuses on getting 5 Forte stacks and then unleashing a special attack which will deal the majority of his damage per rotation. This attack is usually performed only 3 times per rotation. The reason I say usually is because Calcharo actually does have some setup to get 4 Death Messengers, however, these are wildly inconsistent and seen as unreliable by most of the community, which I do have to agree with. But that's a bit of a spoiler for later on, so let's focus on how Calcharo actually works still. He isn't only locked to his ultimate like Shengliao, he does have some other stuff within his kit, mainly his Forte bar and his skill. Whenever you use his skill outside of his liberation, he will gain a Forte stack, which will stack up to 3 times, and because his skill is a 3-hit combo, you only need 1 full skill cast to actually get full Forte. When you have full Forte, you're able to cast a heavy attack Death Messenger, which does an okay amount of damage. However, most of the time, you'd rather ignore this than actually focus on it, because you'd rather use your skills during your Resonance Liberation, as they are great sources of animation cancels. But again, we'll have to talk about that later. So Calcharo from the workings of his kit is very similar to a character that is widely considered to be good. So we're already off to a pretty good start. But let's talk about his meta history next. When Calcharo came out back during patch 1.0, yes at launch because he is a standard banner 5-star, a lot of people considered him to be one of the best DPSs in the game. But was this actually true? Well, he faced some pretty stiff competition. GN was the first limited 5-star to come out in the game. So right off the bat, Calcharo instantly had a character who was already fulfilling the DPS role that was kind of just better in every way. But there were plenty people who were skipping GN. So how good was Calcharo when you put him out of the equation? Well, even then he faced some pretty rough competition. There was Havoc Rover and Donjin using the double Dreamless strat, which was an incredible way to get a large amount of AoE damage back during 1.0 before the bug got fixed. So even if you were only looking at free characters, you had quite some competition. But surely that was all, right? Well, there was also Encore. Encore is to this day one of the most revered characters in the game, especially because she's on the standard banner, competing with even GN as a limited 5-star, with her only disadvantage compared to GN being her lack of AoE. So there was very little reasons to actually invest into Calcharo. But then why did people think he was so good? Well, there were plenty of reasons, and most of them were just people didn't understand the other characters fully yet. Encore was a character who was later revealed to be an incredibly strong hypercarry, and while she did have quickswap teams, hypercarry was her most preferable for most people, so a lot of people just didn't know about her best team. As for Havoc Rover, the Hoyoverse games, which are the most popular gacha games before Withering Waves, usually didn't have the main character be that strong, so a lot of people had a bias against the main character, which meant that there were a lot of people who valued Calcharo way more than they should have. And it only continued over time that Calcharo was getting more praise than he deserved. When Yinlin was added at the beginning of 1.0, a lot of people began using her with Calcharo, which, while it was her best use case at the time, unnecessarily inflated the opinion people had of Calcharo, because they saw Yinlin doing all the dirty work and thought it was Calcharo. Not to mention that the hypercarry teams that Calcharo had weren't really that powerful. mainly because Calcharo gets interrupted very easily. So you kind of want to swap cancel, which instantly raises a character's skill floor. And as time went on, this kind of just kept increasing. Changli was the next major buff for Calcharo, but even then it was mainly just Changli carrying the team's performance, while Calcharo was also doing stuff in the background, I guess. Next up, we got Shang Liao in 1.2, which was unironically one of the biggest increases for Calcharo in the game's meta to this day, because it allowed Calcharo to have a quickswap team that wasn't complete ass to play, because Shang Liao slowed enemies down, allowing Calcharo to do his basic attacks a lot easier, which means that he didn't have as many interruption issues as he had with any other teammate. We got Shorekeeper in 1.3, who would also increase Calcharo's performance, but she kind of increased everyone's performance, so why are we even counting this? And since then, Calcharo has kind of just remained the same, and a lot of the complaints about Calcharo you can see kind of stem from the same issue, being the fact that Calcharo kind of needs a lot of effort to actually be worth using. Which is why he's one of the most divisive characters within Wuthering Waves' meta community, because it is a fact that Calcharo's skill floor is ridiculously high. The reason that Calcharo is so hard to effectively use is because his ultimate duration is incredibly tight. I said earlier that the most amount of death messengers most people are going to get is free. This is the same as Shang Liao's hypercubes. But the thing with Calcharo is that him getting free death messengers is not as certain as Shang Liao and his free hypercubes. This is because of their ultimate duration's difference. Shang Liao's ultimate lasts a whopping 28 seconds. That is an absurd amount of time, and allows you to incredibly easy get all of your hypercubes out. However, Calcharo's ult only lasts half of this time. And because dodge counters don't add to his forte bar, it's very possible that you just straight up do not get the third Death Messenger. And because Death Messenger is by a very large part Calcharo's highest damage output, if you don't get them all, you lose a ridiculous amount of damage. And if you miss enough Death Messengers, you can just miss the entire clear, especially if you're playing a hyper carry team. And because in order to generate forte, you have to actually hit an enemy with his enhanced basic attacks, this means that any enemy that moves is also Calcharo's worst nightmare. If the enemy moves very frequently, it's going to be incredibly hard to stack up forte, and if you waste even 1 second too many, you're going to lose that third Death Messenger. So you can't even say that it's fully a skill issue, because the enemy AI can just be fully against you and not allow you to actually do your rotation. And being inconsistent in a gacha game might as well be a death sentence. But then why is there this little bit of the player base that still calls him an incredible DPS? Well, it's simple. That little bit of the player base is just really committed to Calcharo. They learned all of his techs. They learned his best rotations. They are willing to reset for the boss to do exactly what they want. And when that happens, Calcharo gets some really impressive clears. Because let me be entirely honest with you, it's not like Calcharo is an entirely unusable character. It's just that for him to get a strong performance, it is way more effort than should be required. Also, a lot of people just think he is really cool. I'm gonna be honest here, I was a day one Calcharo main because he was just that cool. But that's just me. What are your thoughts on Calcharo? I think that while he is a very cool character, he is definitely not worth the praise that some people give him. And if you are really good at Calcharo, that's cool. Enjoy your Calcharo. But far too many people call him good outside of context, not allowing people to understand that he requires a lot of effort to actually master. Comment your opinion of Calcharo down below, and while you're down there, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Also, join my Discord if you have any questions. I'm pretty active in there, so it's the best place to reach me. Also, I'm going to be streaming viewer polls for Brant on Thursday at 7 PM Central European Time. And in my Discord, there's going to be a form where you can submit your account so I can do your polls on stream. But that'll be it from me. Peace.